who will set us going in terms of our recording. So, okay, thank you, Sharon. So, if I can just welcome everybody to today's session, this session that's starting at 10 to 11. So my name is Jill Orco and I'm a regional manager for the Chartered Institute of Housing. The sessions that we're bringing to you today are part of CIH's and the wider housing professions activities during National Careers Week 2021. And we're now in day 5 of the 6 days of National Careers Week. And what a week it's been. It's been really, really good in terms of our outputs and our communication and our messages during the week. And one of the things that I just shared with the group earlier at our first session earlier on was some of the things that we've been doing in terms of making sure that we've got blogs and articles and social media quotes which are going out from our housing professionals, from our members, talking about their careers, whether that's their career paths, how they've come to do the role that they're doing, some top tips for your career in housing. And also one of the things that we did on Twitter on Wednesday, which I am just absolutely, I'm just taken back and so pleased with how it's gone, has been about sharing our 3 words that describe our housing profession. What does our career mean to us? And if you're active on Twitter at the moment, that is still going. I just, and when I heard about the number of impressions that we've had from it yesterday through some of our marketing colleagues, I'm just astounded. So thank you to everybody who's taken the time to do that. It gives us some strong, really strong messages about our profession and going forwards, and those positive comments and statements about why we truly believe in our profession. And so I'll be using that in a great number of ways. So, you know, thank you for that. The purpose of this session today, you'll be aware that we've sort of got a range of sessions. We've just had a session with Paddy, who's talked about the history of social housing, who was able to answer some, you know, very practical questions from our audience earlier, covering the social housing history, but also talking about professionalism as well. So, and that will carry on throughout the day, no doubt. And thank you for attending today's session, and this session that we're about to embark on now is actually giving us the opportunity to hear more about housing organisations within this sector. I'm not going to spend any time introducing our speakers because I'm not chairing this session. Aileen, we're delighted to welcome, is our participative chair. So Aileen's going to be leading on this session here today. You know, so Aileen, I'm going to hand it over to you while I just put myself, you know, sort of behind the scenes, but I'm here as you need me.
Great. Thank you and welcome, everybody. I am so delighted to see you, and I am also delighted to welcome our guests. Unfortunately, we're having a bit of trouble finding one of them, but but never mind. We've got 2 very high quality ones, and I'm sure that we will find the 3rd. So if you want to put questions or anything in chat for our guests, I want this to be as participative as possible. Although we've got people talking about their careers, this is your opportunity to quiz them about their journeys or their organisations or what makes them get out of bed in the morning. You can ask them, I'm sure you can ask them anything, can't you? Just nod, yes, thank you. So yeah, if you've got questions, then please just pop them in the chat, and we'd be delighted to try and answer those. Righty, okay, so what we've got is that we've got Lisa Nichols, who's Director of Housing at Rooftop Housing Association. we should have joining us, and we're trying to find him, Wade Adams, who's an area housing manager at Nottingham City Homes. And we've got Mel Brain, who is head of housing strategy and partnerships at Cornwall Council. One of my most favourite places on the planet is Cornwall. Disappointed that I can't get down there for our holiday, our planned holiday in Easter, but you live in one of the most beautiful bits of the world, Mel. So, right, without further ado, because you don't want to listen to me prattling on, I'll ask Lisa to say a few words about who she is, what she does, and to kick us off with this session.
Thank you, Eileen. Hello, my name is Lisa Nichols. I'm Housing Director for Rooftop Housing Group. I have responsibility for housing services delivery. So within the spectrum of responsibility I have, I've got responsibility for sheltered housing, supported housing services, housing management, asset management and income collection as well. I've got just a few slides really to talk you through, just to give you a feel for rooftop housing and what we do, how we were established and the type of services and accommodation we provide. A slide that really talks you through and demonstrates the wealth of opportunities in terms of job opportunities within housing. A little bit about my own career path, so I can just explain to you how I came into housing and the jobs that I've had so far. And I suppose the last slide in terms of why choose housing. I'm of course going to say it's fantastic and really rewarding, because it absolutely is. But hopefully through the session that we have, you'll be able to see absolutely why I chose it and why other people should do as well. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to put a few slides on the screen now for you. Hopefully you should be able to see that. Is that okay? Okay, wonderful. So in terms of Rooftop Housing Association, we were formed in 1994. We have just over 7,000 properties, and we're actually quite diverse in the type of properties that we own and manage. So like other housing associations, we have general needs accommodation, supported accommodation in terms of sheltered housing, but we also have a range of extra care housing that provides housing management, care and support services. And we've also got a specific dementia scheme as well, so very specialist accommodation and one care home. In addition to that, we have accommodation for care leavers, so for young people particularly between the ages of 17 and 25, homeless accommodation. We've also have domestic abuse safe houses, and we also have a specific specialism within Gypsy and traveller site accommodation as well. So within that range of accommodation, we offer tenancies, we offer leasehold accommodation, shared ownership, and also some outright sales as well. And this year we've got a really hefty target of delivering up to 1,000 homes through our new build scheme as well. Like every single housing association out there, we have a really strong social purpose. So ours is about building great homes, supporting successful communities by being a better business. In terms of the way in which we work, I could talk all day about the stakeholders that we talk to every single day of the week. First and foremost, our key stakeholder is our tenants, followed by local authority partners, community groups, police, probation, social services, care providers, the NHS, you name it, we work with them. And I think what makes housing really good is that we're fantastic at bringing people together to make things happen. And a good example of that recently has been through the COVID-19 pandemic, really, in our close work with local authorities. At the moment, we're just about to finalise a community investment strategy that has brought together integrated care and integrated community strategies. So talking to our partners within the NHS and local authorities to think about longer term community resilience and what we can do together to be able to support individuals and communities longer term. So in terms of the opportunities that are within housing, this slide here I think demonstrates the range of jobs that we have available. So for those who want to be involved in frontline delivery, lots of opportunities in terms of supported housing, as a supported accommodation officer or a housing officer within the neighbourhoods where we have a significant amount of general needs and older persons accommodation. But if you're a specialist that wants to focus on property within asset management, there are a range of opportunities within repairs, maintenance, grounds maintenance, cleaning services. We also have income collection teams, so those that specialise in collecting rent, money advisors to help tenants maximise their income through welfare benefits advice. And something that's very, very prominent and very important within what we do is health, safety and compliance. And obviously with changes more recently in terms of the building safety regulator, changes within the fire safety regulation particularly, that's more important than it ever has been beforehand. And within our own organisation, we're developing a health, safety and compliance team led by a manager at the moment. There's also more transferable skills and transferable opportunities in terms of finance, development, ICT, governance, those types of roles as well. So this is just a few examples, but just to give you an idea really of the range of opportunities that are available out there. So in terms of my own path, I've been really fortunate really to have started working in housing at a really young age. I wanted to work in housing really early on. I knew I wanted to work in public services delivery and started as a trainee within a local authority housing department and quite quickly moved into delivering services within the neighbourhood housing offices and have some fantastic memories of becoming a housing officer and being out on the patch talking to our residents. And for me, I think the first thing that captured me about housing was actually the level of interaction day to day with people who have a range of issues sometimes in terms of complex needs, and actually that ability to be able to listen and understand where you can make a difference to that individual. And then as I progressed in my career, the ability to be able to bring about change on a wider scale for me absolutely was a key motivator. And I suppose within my career path, I've demonstrated a few people that have really helped me along my way, a few organisations. So at the age of 17, I had a really good mentor. His name was Norman Thomas. He'd worked in social housing for 30 years. And believe it or not, he started his career as a rent collector, walking up and down roads every single day of the week, knocking on people's door to collect the rent. And he had a fantastic knowledge for social housing and great passion for what he did as well. And it was really infectious, and he absolutely took the time to teach me about what social housing was and why it was so important and where I could make a difference. I've been supported by the Chartered Institute of Housing right from the beginning. I think my first piece of training was in 1997 as a property inspector, and I've done lots of different level courses through the CIH since then. What I like about it is that it's very practical, very hands-on, very specific to what you want to learn about, which is brilliant. And for me, a range of resources that they have available through the CIH too. I've recently become a mentor, and I've been able to share my knowledge and experience and hopefully encourage others to be able to come into the sector, and those that are already within the sector, encourage them to be able to take their next steps with confidence as well. Other people that have helped me along my way, the Centre for Housing and Support, the University of Plymouth, but I've also identified people like the Institute of Leadership Management and the Institute of Customer Service, because those two elements are critical within housing services delivery, and their qualifications and their support and their resources have also been really helpful. So within the roles that I've had very operational roles in terms of frontline services within the housing offices many years ago. A team leader for estate services that kind of focused on gas and voids and those types of elements. And then later in community investment, customer service, and then broadening that out into housing services delivery, and some commercial and business development opportunity as well, because there are lots of providers out there that have a range of commercial facing services that do create a profit to be able to invest in building more homes for the community. So in terms of choosing housing, for me, the reason why I do it is because we genuinely make a difference in what we do. We provide homes, we support individuals, and we support communities as well. So for me, helping, caring, supporting is absolutely a key driver and the reason why I'm in housing. I think that's pretty much everything on my slides that I wanted to take you through. I could talk all day about how good it is to work in housing and lots of things that I've been involved with over the years, but really happy to be able to just take questions and have a conversation, really.
Okay, shall we take some questions now, and then can we move on to Mel? We haven't got Wade, we can't find him, so I might have to do that thing that one of our comms managers said to me once and said, can you get on the stage and fill for 10 minutes? What about? I don't know. Let's talk. Anyway, so we've got oodles of time for questions. If anybody's got any of Lisa, or if not, we will move straight on to Mel, and then hopefully you'll have some collections of questions at the end. Alina, do I see you're taking yourself off because you want to ask a question? That's cool.
Yes.
So Alina Cower.
Thank you. Hi, Lisa. That was a really, really interesting career map. Well done and congratulations to you. I'd be keen to learn, in your journey, which was the most challenging jump? And the one I'm particularly interested in is the one from head of housing to the assistant and then the director. Could you just give us some guidance around that, and what were the challenges you faced, and how did you make that transition?
Thank
you. I think it's a really good question, and actually probably one of the trickiest career manoeuvres, to be perfectly honest. I think I benefited from the fact that I moved from head of housing to assistant director before becoming a director, because it enabled me to straddle the both without it's such a big change for me, really. Within the head of housing role, I think that's always a really difficult role anyway, because you are straddling operational delivery and also strategic focus and support as well to the director level. So I think it's a good place to start with. That transition in terms of moving away fully from operational services is very difficult. And for me, it's about making sure you've got the confidence in the team around you. And I think in my own mindset, it's a change in terms of, it's about you nurturing and creating the right environment for your heads of service to be successful operationally. So that was very much a fundamental step. You do that as a manager and you do that as a leader, but actually taking that step back and making sure that you're the facilitator and you're providing that environment, making sure they've got the tools that they need, they feel supported. And for you as a strategic director, making sure you've got focus on the wider business as an executive. So it's understanding more about the sector, understanding more about how your business works and what that business needs from you as an executive, supporting the chief executive a lot closer in terms of how we work and how we grow our business. And that interaction with the board as well is a very key change, absolutely.
It's brilliant, thank you.
No problem, thank you.
That was a really great answer to that question, Lisa. A lot of breadth, I think, came out in your answer there. So thanks for that. Anything else before we move on to Mel? You could put your hand up, or you can just come on camera and shout. No? Okay. So can I ask Mel Brain then, who is the Head of Housing Strategy and Partnerships at Cornwall Council, to talk a bit more maybe from a local authority perspective. I think that would be really helpful for us. And so I'll hand over to you now. Mel.
Lovely, thank you. So as it was said, I'm Mel Brain. I'm Head of Housing Strategy and Partnerships for Cornwall Council. I think most people know where Cornwall is. There are some unique features of Cornwall. We don't have a lot of neighbouring local authorities. A lot of work that you do in local government, you're expected to work with your neighbouring local authorities, and that's quite challenging for us because we don't have lots of neighbours. That also creates other issues around market capacity and finding staff who are willing to come and work in the location where you are. As a local authority, we've been a unitary authority for about 10 years, so we're quite a relatively new local authority in that respect. We had 6 districts prior to that. And we've got a mix of housing as a result of that. A couple of the local authorities pre-unitary status had large-scale voluntary transfer, so they had sold their housing stock and formed housing associations. One of those was what is now Cornwall Housing Limited, and that's still owned by Cornwall Council. So we have about 10,500 homes in Cornwall, and then we have some large providers like Live West, Ocean and Coastline, who also have a large stock profile in our area. As part of my role, I oversee a contract with Cornwall Housing. So it's an arm's length management organisation that we commission to manage our housing on our behalf. So that's quite a different arrangement from a lot of local authorities who do direct delivery. I also oversee commissioning of other projects. So we have a big contract with the Citizens Advice Bureau. I commission a range of homelessness services, etc. for people. And part of my role, I also form partnerships, really conscious that we might have a strategic vision for housing in Cornwall, but we can't deliver it on our own as local authority. We're very reliant on working in partnership with others, whether that be other housing providers, local businesses, voluntary and charitable sector. Everybody has an absolutely key role to play. So part of my job is about how I bring those people together, how we align our vision and our objectives, and how we make a fundamental difference to the residents of Cornwall. Obviously, part of my role is strategy and policy. I think that's probably in the job title. So putting together those strategic visions and then transforming them into action and reality, because it's all good and well having stuff written on a piece of paper, but that doesn't make it happen. People make it happen. I also, I'm the strategic lead for Gypsy and Traveller Services. And I think, that's a really important part of my role, because I think they're a very forgotten and overlooked community who have some really significant housing challenges, not least because we don't have enough places for them to live. And the settled community don't necessarily recognise their cultural way of life. So it's very important that we do create a space for them where they're safe and they're secure. So part of my role is about looking at that. I have quite a lot of input into homelessness. So a large part of the work that I do is around rough sleeping and homelessness, trying to put stuff into place to prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. And definitely we have a vision to end homelessness in Cornwall. And for the last 12 months, I have led the COVID response cell on behalf of the Council for Housing and Homelessness. So the last 12 months of my role have looked very, very different, because it has been an emergency response space rather than what I would call my core housing space. At the council, we have 4 housing teams within our housing service. We have a private sector housing team who work with the private sector landlords and tenants, looking at enforcement, making sure we have good quality private sector housing. We have a home solutions service, which is about enabling people to live independently when they're vulnerable or have disabilities. We have a development and delivery service. So we set a challenge to deliver 1,000 homes over 4 years. We've just achieved that, so we're very proud of that. And we do, as a local authority, build our own houses, and our members are very, very committed to extending our housing stock and offering homes that are built through the council. And then you have my team, which I've already explained. Through Cornwall Housing, that's obviously where our residents, our contact with our residents primarily is. They deliver all of our housing management. They deliver repairs and maintenance on our behalf. They also deliver all of our housing options and homelessness services. So quite a varied role for them, along with resident engagement, community engagement, all of the business planning and continuity planning that you would expect to be in place for any kind of business. One of the things that I also get involved in is integration between health, social care and housing. So I very much believe if we get the housing right, then social care and health benefit from that. And a lot of focus is on health and social care integration, but I really think it needs to be a tripartite integration. So we're doing a lot of work with health and social care to try and support them in delivering their objectives through the delivery of different housing services. And in terms of, I suppose one of the key differences in working in a local authority, perhaps from some other housing organisations, is politics. So we're a democratic organisation with elected members. And that inevitably means that sometimes those political decisions perhaps override or cast a different lens on the things that you want to deliver as a housing service. But I would also say that I think members are really fundamental, because they are elected by our residents. They are meant to be the voice of our residents. And many, many of them come into politics because of local issues like housing. And if I took our portfolio holder as an example, he came into politics because of a local housing issue in the village where he lived. And he's been a politician for a long time now, but it was because of local factors that impacted on people's lives, and he really wanted to do something about it. But it does cast a different lens on some of the work that we do when you work in a political environment. And anybody who works in a local authority at the moment will tell you we're coming up to elections in May, and we'll go into purdah on the 22nd of March. And that fundamentally stops you from doing certain things. So sometimes you have to put work on hold during a purdah period because you can't go out and consult with people in the way that you ordinarily would. In terms of my career journey, I went into housing through academia, if you like. So I was sponsored to do a master's degree at Cardiff University, and I was sponsored by Swansea Council. And as part of that master's degree in housing, I got to go do work placements in different teams within Swansea Council. And I know Lisa's talked about rent collection. I have very vivid memories of walking around housing estates in Swansea with a rent collection bag across me, knocking on doors and taking cash from people. And I'm fairly sure we probably wouldn't do that now. But it was a really good training ground. You got out, you met the residents, you got to speak to the residents, you got a feel for the things that were going on in their lives and what was important to them. From there, I became a housing officer, so I managed a patch for around 1,000 homes, including sheltered housing. And from that, I moved into policy. And then I spent a bit of time moving between the policy and strategic roles and the operational roles. So I would do operational for a bit and then go into the policy side again. I did some housing development and enabling, looking at how we deliver new homes for our residents. And then prior to my current role, I worked as a housing strategy manager in West Berkshire. And that was very much about the strategic functions, the enabling of new housing, delivering our housing strategy. And then after I'd been there for about 4 or 5 years, I was asked to take on the operational management, which was primarily around housing allocations, homelessness, because they didn't have any housing stock. So some local authorities don't have housing stock. So you have a much smaller function in terms of housing in those local authority areas. As part of that, towards the end, I was asked to oversee their adult social care transformation programme. And that was a really good opportunity for me to work with colleagues in social care. I suppose I stepped into the project manager role with an objective viewpoint because I wasn't immersed in social care. So you can ask the silly questions, you can challenge and say, why do you do things in that way? And I found that a really, really valuable project to be involved in. And then I moved to Cornwall. It'll be 4 years in July. And Eileen's right, it's a very beautiful part of the world. And I've explained my current role to you already. I have also been involved in the Chartered Institute of Housing since I was a student at Cardiff University. I've been involved in local committees putting on events for local housing professionals. I've been involved in the regional board. I'm a member champion because I think there's real value to being a member of the Chartered Institute of Housing. There's loads of resources on the website. There's opportunities to do training. There's webinars that are available. If the budget will come out, there'll be a policy paper that gives you a briefing that's really easy to absorb and take in a lot of information in very short order. And I'm also a registered mentor, so I want to give back because I've been given so much through my career. And I'm very, very keen on learning and development. So I'm really keen to encourage the people that work for me and with me to go through training, to do apprenticeships, to get their qualifications. And I've never put anybody through an apprenticeship or qualification that hasn't benefited me and my service. So they'll all do projects. They might spend time off the job, but they're all contributing something back in. And it's really nice to see people then move on and get promotions and things because they've done that. And I see that as a real benefit. And I'm really excited because I've just got some grant funding that's going to allow me to do 2 things with people with lived experience. So we're hoping we're going to be able to offer some sort of apprenticeship for people who were formerly homeless, and also extend our peer advocate scheme. And there's nothing better than seeing the people that you worked with as a service user then come through and start to work for you in that sector, bringing all of their experience and empathy and understanding, and bringing it back into the workplace. So I'm really excited about those opportunities for the future. I also had Institute of Leadership and Management training, which I think is invaluable. And I've gone back to Cardiff University and I'm doing my professional doctorate at the moment and hoping to do some research into homelessness. So I think I'm always learning. Every day is a learning opportunity when you work in housing. And the reason I've worked in housing, exactly the same as Lisa, you do make a real difference. It's the people that I get to meet and the people that I get to work with. And because fundamentally, I don't believe there's anywhere more important than your home. It's where you make your memories. We know for some of our residents that that's not always a good place to be, but we can bring about change that makes it a good place for them to be. I think that's probably everything.
Wow, that was brilliant, really brilliant. So any questions for Mel? Really good point to end on. Yeah, any questions? Charlotte?
Yes, hi. Thank you very much, Mel and Lisa, two really interesting and inspiring presentations. Melanie, I was really interested in the point you were making about the sort of politics aspect of working in the local council. And as someone who is looking to come into the sector, I've been wondering about that difference between working for a local authority versus working for a housing association. And I was wondering if, well, perhaps either of you could speak a little bit more about what it is, what are those differences? I mean, are there sort of organisational culture differences or differences in terms of opportunities or pathways or particular challenges between, you know, one versus the other? And then maybe if I could just ask a second question, I mean, you've both had very rich and long career paths up until now, and I was wondering, how have you seen the sector change in the time that you've been working in it? Thanks.
Great questions. Who wants to go first? Lisa, do you want to start, and then we'll come to you, Mel, if that's okay? Thank you.
I think for me, probably the most fundamental difference between the local authorities and housing associations is pretty much what Melanie said really early on in terms of the level of political engagement, really. And I suppose fundamentally the governance and how those two organisations works. Obviously, there's a really strong and robust committee framework through the local authorities that have got very heavy member involvement. And obviously, as a result of that political elements. Within housing associations, obviously, we have a board and we have various committees in terms of our governance levels. But that is different. We do have a level of political engagement, absolutely. So myself and Boris, the Chief Exec, engage directly with MPs and local councillors, and our councillors are very actively involved with our housing officers and patch officers as well, to be perfectly honest. I suppose increasingly more, there's a similar level of opportunity through local authorities in terms of the ability to be able to build homes, because that's been a key change in the sector and a very welcome one as well. When I worked through a local authority many years ago, we were really constrained because we weren't able to build more homes, and actually we didn't have the money to invest in the properties prior to decent homes funding being available. And the local authority that I worked for set up an arm's length management organisation to do that, really, to be able to secure the funding. I think it was about £39 million worth of funding at the time to be able to invest in homes. So, you know, that created a whole wealth of opportunity and ability for us to be able to take the service forward. But as an arm's length management organisation straddling between the two, it was great in terms of being able to gain investment into building, to be able to invest in homes, but actually it didn't enable us to be able to build more homes. So for us, becoming a housing association really unlocked that ability for us. So very quickly started to embark upon the process of stock transfer from the local authority to be able to do that. But obviously lots of constraints have been knocked down. You know, those barriers have been knocked down over the years, so it enables local authorities to be more of an enabling partner and partner with housing associations more to be able to build homes, which is fantastic and very welcome. In terms of the changes in the sector over the years, there's been significant changes, to be perfectly honest. When I first joined housing, we were going through compulsive competitive tendering back in 1996, and I worked for the client side at that point. It feels like a million miles away.
I worked for the contractor side. I remember it very well.
It feels like that just feels so alien now, but that was my grinding. I got to know housing really well through working on the client side, to be perfectly honest. But I can't think of anything more constraining and more difficult and demoralising, really, in terms of that structure. Changes over the years, I think for me, it's been a focus on the customer actually, and the way in which we provide services. It's changed significantly over the years. I mean, I was involved when I was working on the client side with a group of tenants who were reviewing the investment programme at the time. And that was quite new for the local authority in terms of engaging customers in terms of determining priorities for investing in homes and the quality of materials and what was used in terms of kitchens and bathroom upgrades and that type of thing. And the level of engagement and the level of ability to influence service delivery and actually genuinely hearing customer voices has changed significantly in terms of delivery over the years. And I think as housing associations, our ability to be able to bring about more change that is wider than just managing homes and building homes, but actually being a fundamental strong partner, working with the likes of health, Royal Health and Wellbeing boards, for instance, which took quite some time to be able to navigate and get us through the door. But actually we're seen as a very strong, competent partner. And we really do bring about long-lasting change as a result of some of those enabling projects that we're involved with.
That's brilliant.
Just building on that, I think there's no such thing these days as a council estate or a housing association estate. They're mixed tenure. So you are working with communities, and whatever you do with your tenants or your shared owners or your leaseholders has an impact on that wider community. So, you know, the days when it was a single tenure estate just don't exist. It is definitely about that wider community work now.
Has that picked up the answer to your question, Charlotte? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And some really positive changes in the sector. So no, thank you both.
Yeah. I mean, I would. So you said you were looking to get into housing. Well done you. So I had this is pure coincidence, and I didn't set this up, but I had a WhatsApp message from a close friend of mine last night who has gone to do a bit of troubleshooting somewhere, all of whom shall remain nameless for obvious reasons. But I'm reading directly from her message. It says, "We have spent so long recruiting for attitude and customer service skills, which is great, but we seem to have forgotten to actually train people in housing management." And actually she is struggling with people, nice people, well-meaning people, hard-working people who haven't got the basics. And so I'll just, because we haven't got Wade, I'll just say a quick 5 minutes, well, less than that, a quick 5 minutes about where I started. So I penned a tribute earlier on this week to Arthur Oscroft, who was the Director of Housing at Nottingham City Council when I started my career there. I started as a trainee on a trainee scheme that he set up, where you had to do the CIH. You didn't have a choice about it. You had to do the CIH. And now, you know, we've kind of evolved around the way we think about qualifications. But I can say that even now, goodness knows, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but a lot years later, I still use the learning. I still use the, you know, we had a court tenancy issue pop up the other day, and I said, well, you know, we need to do that. We need to restart the process because we can't do that. And actually that was in my head, and it was in my head because I've been able to keep up my my knowledge. So I had that really broad traineeship, and that's what we're trying to create here at Grand Union. It's been so that we can give people that real breadth. You know, I can remember working in technical services. I can remember speccing home improvements in a general, you won't remember these, but general improvement areas and housing action areas. You know, I can remember slum clearance. We don't call it that anymore. Yeah, I can remember doing all of those things. But actually, it was Arthur Oscroft who started that traineeship that gave me the ability to do that. And I've done that. So I did quite a long time in local authorities. I just want to pick up on a point that that you made, Lisa, about a mentor. I had a mentor, a guy called Bill Best. He was the most one of the most important people, I think, in my life. I actually had him reading poetry at my wedding. But he was he was very much, well, you can go and do that. Well, I can't do that. Well, of course you can do it. You could do that, that, and that. So you just, so it is, and so if I was giving advice, I'd say lean in. They lean into your career, volunteer for things, because actually what Bill taught me to do was to stick my hand up and say, well, I can do that. Well, I'll have a go at that. Well, I'm not really sure how I could do that, but I'll have a go if you haven't got anybody else. And then he said, no, I've got you. I don't need anybody else. And so find those people in your career, because actually they are like gold. They are like gold. And I'm determined that we here at Grand Union will be those for other people, because I think it's really important. You know, when I did hear somebody, another friend of mine, this is a few years ago now, went to work at an organisation, and none of the team were trained, and the logic was, well, if you train them, they leave. And my friend said, well, yeah, but if you don't train them, they stay. And actually you're not doing the best you can for the people who pay our wages. And so there is something, and I see it, you know, I hate it when great people leave here, but actually we're putting good people out in the sector with a Grand Union ethos and a Grand Union way of doing things. I feel really proud of that. And the CIH supports all of that learning and has supported me throughout my career. And so I have been able to, latterly in my career, I've had to learn to say no, because then when you get a reputation for saying yes, loads of people ask you to do things, and then you end up with too much. But that's kind of the way I live my life right now, really. But so there is that stuff really around our current landscape politically, I think, is quite unhelpful in some respects, because I think we've had a budget this week that is focused on supporting home ownership, and we are dealing with demand side rather than dealing with supply. And at some point, you know, I've been working, oh goodness me, for the last 10 years to try and make the economic arguments for demand side, for supply side arguments, because that's the way we will house our people well. So have we got any more? And we must have some more questions. Lisa Fleming is typing. Anybody else want to say anything? Anybody else want to drop in? From what
I was just going to add about the point you made about grasping opportunities, and I think I really liked that, because for me that's key, because within housing, one thing's for sure is that everything will change, and it's a constant evolution in terms of service delivery. And for me, you know, those people that do the best are those that remain agile and remain alert to opportunities and are willing to find something new. And for me, I think housing is really creative, really innovative, and those challenges that are thrown into the housing sector, you know, kind of make us step back, we reflect, and then we reframe and think about, okay, how can we embrace this and make this happen? So for me, some of my most proud moments with working in my career has been when, you know, we've taken a problem and we've thought about it and thought, actually, okay, what can we do differently? A good example of that was working at GCH Housing Association that used to be in Almo. We had a number of properties that were difficult to let, you know, in a tricky area for families, but working with a local authority who were really creative about using Section 106 funding, decided they'd commute some funding for us to be able to develop specialist homeless accommodation. And, you know, by God, that was a hard slog in terms of the work that we did, because properties were in a grade 2, it was in a conservation area, grade 2 listed building as well, so really complex renovation project. But at the end of it, we had really high quality accommodation for ex-offenders, and it's, you know, ex-offenders who are more difficult to house sometimes within interim homeless accommodation and to house longer term. But there's been some fantastic success stories of those people that have joined that accommodation since. So yeah, I really liked that point in terms of embracing opportunities and being creative, because I think that's the key to success and being able to progress your career in housing, without a doubt.
Great. We've got Rebecca Clark Bex on the call, who's just popped a note in the chat that said, having joined the board of Phoenix, I've also seen the resident-led side of things, which has been amazing. So much variety. Do you want to tell us a bit about that, Bex?
I can try for sure. So for me, I suppose my journey into housing, I fell into recruitment rather than falling into housing after leaving university, and that was like selling my soul, or what it felt like. And then when I came across Orbit, having, you know, that's who I ended up basically going to work for after working in recruitment. And I worked for their service matter side, which sold lots of consultancy services to other housing associations. So that was fascinating, trying to get that kind of broad spread of things. And they are quite a big developer as well. So at the time they were building about 2,000 homes a year. So a really commercial housing association that tried to invest all of their profits back into building more homes. So that was really interesting to work for quite a big landlord. But for me, my passion's always been on the resident-led side of things, and how we can empower communities to do these things. And when I first came across Phoenix, having come to work for CIH as a regional manager, as soon as you walk through the doors of their offices, it's just full of residents. So they do things like buy up burnt out pubs and things like that and turn them into head offices or community facilities and things. And you know, because the pubs were right in the heart of the community back in the day, a lot of the residents, or the older residents, remember drinking in the Green Man. And now they go there and there's a cafe, a cooking school, they do indoor markets for residents so they can start their own little businesses, everything. And you know, often the founding members of Phoenix, their kind of history and journey to where they are today was basically because they weren't happy with the service being provided by the council. So they said, right, well, sod it, we're going to do it ourselves then. And they set up Phoenix, and they're still going today. So that is a really interesting model, because there's only, you know, 2 or else 3 independent board members, and the rest of them are all residents. And there's a lot of debate in the sector as to whether or not you should have residents on boards and things like that, depending on the type of organisation you are. So I think depending on who you are, and if you're advising, you know, students or, you know, people who might be interested in a career, I think there's something there for everyone. You know, you could go and work for a big organisation like Orbit if you know, really kind of got a strong commercial background and, you know, that's what you're passionate about, then great. But then on the flip side of that, if you're more kind of a bit fluffy like me that wants to go and work directly with residents and try and feel as though you're making a difference every day, you've got organisations like Phoenix. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's helpful for anyone, but you know, that for me just shows another side of the sector.
I think that's fascinating, absolutely fascinating, and there is that real. I think what you have served to illustrate there, Bex, is that real breadth. There's just masses of opportunity, and I'm convinced there's something for everybody. When my stepdaughter, who left university with a linguistics degree, was thinking about a career and wanting a career in publishing, and I would say, no, go and work in housing, because it's really interesting and you'd be really good at it. And I talk about it all the time, because I've just had the best time. I've learned, I've stretched myself, and I actually feel I've made a contribution, and that there are, you know, it's like sort of leaving footsteps in the sand. Actually, you can see some of your footsteps in the sand, and that's just a really and I'm really proud. Actually, I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of, and I'm really proud now of the organisation that we have created at Grand Union. And I know, you know, I'm not just sort of blowing our trumpet as a sector. I think we undersell ourselves, but I think we do just brilliant work here every day. And sometimes I just find out about it because somebody's posted on our intranet and said, all right, well, so do you want to tell me about the time you saved somebody's life then by giving them CPR, or, you know, happen to be in a scheme, or do you want to tell them about the way you've changed somebody's life by doing that adaptation or building that bungalow for the family with some challenges? I think it's just, you know, it sometimes the rewards take a long time to come, but I think it's really, really rewarding. So have we got any other comments or any other questions? We've got about 10 more minutes left if people want to pop their hands up and say something. Any other contributions? Anything Lisa or Mel want to come in on?
I was just going to mention the CIH professional standards, because for me, I think that marks a really important development for me, and that was absolutely music to my ears in terms of the conversations I've been having with frontline officers recently, because I think within the sector there's been a little bit of a tendency to think about let's do something different with our operating model, and let's genericise our housing officer role, if you like. And I think something within that is almost devalued the professionalism and the level of expertise that you need to be able to manage tenancies. So for me, those professional standards, I suppose, make sure that housing officers and supported housing officers, housing professionals understand the standards in which they're signed up to and the route that they can take and the support that's out there, but also enables them to have a lot more pride in their professional role that they've chosen to do as well. It's quite often said to me that, they're not chartered in exactly the same way that a chartered accountant is, although you can receive a chartered you could be a chartered institute housing member, absolutely fine, but it's not recognised in the same way across the sector. So for me, those professional standards really make quite a big difference. And at the moment, we're starting to think about how we can incorporate that into our core competences as an organisation, so we can really embrace that for the frontline teams. I think that's excellent. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, we're I was talking to Fiona McGregor the other day, the chief exec of the regulator, and she said, I can tell the people in my organisation who have been CIH trained. I can tell. I can tell. And yeah, no, it's so yes, but it has been of massive value. Anything you want to come back with, Mel? Anything you want to pop in and say?
No, I was just picking up on the point that Bex made, and you actually, I'd written in my notes, there's a place for everyone in housing. And there's loads of transferable skills that people bring. I think you're right. I think there is value in doing a housing qualification for the technical insight that it brings you. But as an example, my husband's a quality engineer. He now works in housing doing tenancy sustainment. So there's definitely, it doesn't matter what your background is, there's definitely a place for you in housing. And I would definitely recommend it. I wouldn't do anything else.
No. Nor would I. I had this fanciful notion that I was going to be a professional French horn player, and that would have been a really rubbish life, actually, to think about it. Particularly now, well, I would have been resting a lot, but I have enjoyed keeping my music as a hobby. But doing this for a living has just been the best, and still is the best. I think I've got a few more years in me yet, I hope. So Charlotte, you've popped your camera on. Was there something you wanted to add?
Oh yeah, I was just going to ask another question if I can, if no one else is going to. I was just wondering, from your points of view, with the sort of challenges that are facing the sector, coming up, some of the big issues like decarbonisation of the sector, or I don't know, the economic recession. Anyway, there's some big issues that are coming along or that are happening. What sort of are there particular skills and profile that you think will be important to the sector in terms of staffing? Like what skills and what profiles will your organisations be looking for to kind of face those challenges going forward?
Mel, do you want to take that first, and then Lisa, and then I'll drop in?
Yeah, so I think the carbonisation, the green agenda, if you like, and our local authority has signed a climate change emergency, declared a climate change emergency. So it's a really big issue for us. And we are all expected to play our part, and we've been looking at, through our housing revenue account, how we put measures into all of our homes, which is we've got listed buildings, we've got solid wall buildings. Cornwall doesn't necessarily have standard buildings, so it is a real challenge. And I think there'll be market capacity issues in that area, because I don't think, as nationally, that we've got the range of organisations and people who are skilled to deliver those kind of measures. The things that we're looking at is we will no longer install gas central heating systems. We'll look at alternative types of central heating systems. So then you have to think about how you retrain all of your gas engineers, because we don't want to lose them, we want to keep them, but we have to reskill them in some way to make sure that we can deliver what we want to do in the future. So I think there's definitely something around it, but that's definitely not my area. But we struggle to get people for all types of roles. So we've been doing a lot of recruitment around tenancy sustainment, navigators working with rough sleepers. We can't get people with those skills. Then we advertise development officer roles, which is much more technical, if you like. We can't get people for those roles either. So I think across the whole spectrum, we have a need for people with a range of different skills. So it really depends on what area you're particularly interested in.
Lisa?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I think key areas for us will be consumer regulation, obviously within the sector. We're just going through our self-assessment process for that. Obviously increased focus within health and safety compliance through the building safety regulator and fire standards changes as well. I suppose key elements and roles we're focusing on, we're going through a restructure at the moment, so focusing on roles for asset investment, particularly customer and community, tenancy sustainment like everybody else. What we have recognised is that there's not always the perfect fit of skills and qualifications and experience that we're looking for, and quite often we're recruiting to the right attitude and approach really. So we're looking for people who are positive, who are creative, who are agile as well, because this is a tricky working environment at the moment and we're going to be working in a very agile way going forward. So we want people who are really adaptable, really strong communicators, who are really good at finding and creating partnerships as well, because a lot of what we do is facilitating, you know, longer term change, because actually we're working with a range of partners. So for me, attitude and approach, we can train, we can invest in people to achieve qualifications that they need, but let's get the right people in with the right focus on customers. Actually, let's, you know, make sure we've got our frontline services in particular understanding and really good at engaging on a day-to-day level, having a conversation, building relationships with our customers, because one thing we recognise and really signed up to is building trust. You know, we're in partnership with our tenants. We're not a tell-do. You know, services are delivered that are prescribed and translated through the service feedback that we receive from our customers. So it's an ongoing dialogue and conversation and relationship.
Yeah, I'd add, so in skills terms, it is those solid housing management skills, those technical skills. We employ a qualified occupational therapist, actually, because we, and you wouldn't employ an unqualified one, would you? So why is it all right to employ unqualified housing people or employ housing people and then not train them to be housing people? Because that's about that link between health, housing, and I want to make sure that we provide good homes for people to have good lives in. And so what are the range of things that we need to put in place to ensure that working together with our customers, we can help achieve that for everybody? And so yeah, but for me, it's that flexibility. It's that, well, I'll have a go at that, or I'll do that. The number of people who come in through our customer services team, who Carol Matthews, Chief Executive Riverside, describes them as the nursery. She's not meaning that in any insulting way, but it is about them coming in, getting a real breadth of understanding, and then moving on to specialise. Innovation in assets, particularly around carbon reduction, building information management, you know, all of those new ways of doing things. And but the other thing I would say is good tech and IT skills, those skills that you can, our tech team provide tech for the business. We don't provide the business for the tech to excel. It's the other way around. And so people who can translate, and I just say to Simon, our IT director, I'd like it to do that. And then it's about how we translate that. So those IT skills, really great IT skills, good finance skills, finance development business partners are the people that we struggle to get hold of. So people that keep us safe and make sure that we can build well and build economically well. So yes. So I can see somebody is typing. Alina's typing? We do have to finish. All right, okay, really good point, Lisa, about recruiting for attitude. As you can train and teach, that's great. Good, lovely. So I think we've just about come to the end, haven't we, Jill, of our allotted hour?
Yes.
Can I thank you, Mel and Lisa? And can I thank Bex for doing a pretty good stand-in for Wade, and the CIH for hosting this, and also to all of you for your engagement and your questions. I don't know if, Jill, you've got a few words to say?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Aileen. And if I can just reiterate Aileen's thanks to all of you for your great presentation today, and for imparting that information, and for those fantastic questions that we've had and everything that we've had on the chat. I mean, you know, I can only sort of like sum this up by saying the sort of takeaways that have come from this session and Paddy's session earlier today have outperformed anything that I thought we would be able to sort of gain from today, with this being our first attempt at doing a full day of different sessions for National Careers Week. So a big thank you to everybody who's involved in terms of sharing your career journey and your expertise, and also delegates and attendees as part of the questions and engagement with that. So thank you very much, everybody, for all of that. So for the rest of the day, so we're doing well in terms of time, which is is always a great sign. So we're now going to go on to our virtual lunch break and networking. So the options are yours entirely to either keep your cameras on and your mics on, and anybody that's here, or nip off and get your lunch and get some refreshments. We'll be back then at 12:30 for our next session. And delighted to say that we've got Bex on again. So the next session is at 12:30 till 1:15, and that's entitled "The Wider Picture and Career Paths in Career Study and Case Studies." So with that particular session, we'll be delighted to be joined by Sue Bunt, who's the Head of Organisational Development at Hyde Housing, as well as Rebecca Clark, who, as you know, is the Head of Membership here at CIH. So really looking forward to this session to sort of hear, you know, a lot more about the wider context of the sector, and about case studies that Sue will be able to sort of focus on. So without further ado, again, thank you everyone for everything so far today, and I'll leave you to have your virtual lunch.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.